So, I was reading through the financial press from late 2024, specifically the documents regarding a massive acquisition deal in December. And it struck me that we have this very specific, very polished idea of who Vera Wang is.
hmm
You say the name Vera Wang, and I immediately think pristine, silence, layers of tulle, the Plaza Hotel, maybe a bride crying happy tears in a $20,000 dress.
Right.
It is very soft. It is the fairy tale industrial complex.
It is the ultimate soft power. That name is synonymous with the happiest day of your life.
Yeah.
But if you stop there, you are missing the actual story.
Right. Because when you look at the actual human being behind the label and you dig into the sources we have today, the biographical records, the business archives, and the details of this 2024 sale, the story isn't about fairy tales at all.
Not even close.
It is a story about a woman who is essentially a gladiator.
A gladiator in 6-inch heels.
Seriously,
Yeah.
we are talking about an Olympic-level athlete who failed publicly and was absolutely crushed by it. We are talking about someone who entered the cutthroat world of fashion design at age 40, which is practically geriatric in an industry obsessed with youth, and then proceeded to dominate the market for 3 decades.
And not just dominate it, but fundamentally change how the money works in high fashion. The deep dive today isn't really about wedding dresses.
No.
I mean, we will talk about the dresses, obviously.
Yeah.
But this is really a case study on resilience, the brutal economics of luxury, and perhaps the smartest, weirdest career pivot in American business history.
And we have a lot to get through. We have the skating records from 1968, the Vogue archives where she spent nearly 2 decades, and the financial breakdowns of how she managed to sell high-end couture and Kohl's t-shirts at the same time without destroying her brand.
It's an incredible tightrope walk.
But before we get to the billions, we have to start on the ice.
We have to, because you cannot understand the businesswoman without understanding the athlete.
I want to hover on the skating years for a minute because I think people hear figure skater in a celebrity bio and they think of a hobby.
Oh, yeah. Like it was a fun little after-school activity.
They think, oh, she took lessons at the local mall on Saturdays.
No. This
Yeah.
was not recreational. This was get up at 4 a.m., skate until school, go back to the rink, do homework in the car, intensity. This was a full-time job for a child.
The sources are pretty clear about this. She started at 8 years old, which is a common age for this level of session to start.
It has to start that young. Your body is still pliable. You don't have the same fear an adult does. And she wasn't just at some local club. We are looking at sources that place her training in Denver during the summers.
Which is a big deal.
It's a huge deal. Now, keep in mind, she's a New York City girl. She grew up on the Upper East Side, but she's shipping out to Denver, away from home, to train with top coaches like Peter Dunfield and Sonia Klopfer.
And these aren't just any coaches.
These are legends in the skating world. This is like a young musician going to Juilliard for the summer. It's the highest level of training you can get. She was all in.
And she wasn't just doing solo loops, right? She was a pair skater.
Which is a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
It's so much more dangerous. It's so much more technically demanding. She skated with a partner named James Stewart.
What does that add to the equation psychologically?
Well, if you know anything about physics and skating, pairs is incredibly dangerous. You were being thrown in the air, you were doing death spirals, you were spinning in close proximity with blades attached to your feet.
But literally blades.
Sharp metal blades. It requires a level of trust and precision that goes way beyond just skating around. You have to be in total sync with another human being. Your life is quite literally in their hands on some of these moves.
So she's learning discipline, she's learning artistry, but she's also learning this intense, high-stakes collaboration.
Exactly. And that's a business skill, right? Trusting a partner.
Absolutely. And they were good. They weren't just participating. They were competing at the national level. They made it to the 1968 U.S. Figure Skating Championships.
Which is the top tier. That is the funnel for the Olympics. That's the competition when the Olympic team gets selected. This is the moment she had been training for since she was 8 years old.
And we actually found this incredible little nugget in the archives in the January 9, 1968 issue of Sports Illustrated. There she is. Vera Wang featured in Faces in the Crowd.
It's amazing. A little black and white photo.
That is wild to me. Imagine flipping through a sports magazine in 1968. You're looking for football scores or boxing stats, and you see the future queen of bridal fashion, but she's wearing skates, not a gown.
And the caption implies her trajectory is set. It positions her as a rising star, an athlete on the cusp of greatness. She is aiming for the Grenoble Olympics. That was the only goal.
It was the singular focus of her young life. She had dedicated her entire childhood and adolescence to this one specific moment, the 1968 Games.
Everything was riding on it.
And then the crash.
Mm.
The source material's a little blunt here. It just says she didn't make the cut.
Which sounds so simple, but the emotional reality of that. I mean, in elite sports, that is the cruelest part. There is no second-place prize for the Olympic team. You are either on the plane or you are sitting at home.
And she was sitting at home.
She was sitting at home. She described it later in interviews as being devastated. And I think we need to really pause and empathize with that. Imagine being 19 years old. You have given up your social life. You have trained thousands of hours. You have pushed your body to the limit. Your parents have invested a fortune.
And you are told, no, you aren't good enough in a public forum.
That breaks people. That is the kind of trauma that sends people into a tailspin for a decade. I mean, how many stories have we heard of athletes who peak in high school and then spend the rest of their lives at the local bar talking about could have been?
That's the narrative for so many.
Exactly. Or they cling to it. They become a coach at the local rink just to stay close to the glory, unable to let go of the dream. Vera Wang did something very specific, and I think this is the key to her entire character.
What?
She went cold turkey. She quit.
She just walked away completely.
She walked away completely. She recognized with a kind of surgical precision that that door was closed. The Olympic dream was dead. So she turned around and looked for a completely different door.
But, and this is the important part, she took the work ethic of an Olympic-level athlete and applied it to a completely different field.
She didn't lose the discipline. She just re-aimed it.
She traded the ice rink for the fashion closet.
Precisely. She has said in interviews that she still views skating as multidimensional. And I think what she means is that the discipline, the artistic expression, the performance aspect, the need to be perfect under pressure, she just transferred all that energy into clothes.
So the failure wasn't a waste, it was a training ground.
It was the most important training ground of her life. But it wasn't an overnight switch where she suddenly became a famous designer. This is the other myth we need to bust. There was a long, long apprenticeship.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because sometimes when we tell these successful founder stories, it sounds like she failed at skating, so the next day she opened a shop and became a billionaire.
The highlight reel version.
Right, but there was a 20-year gap there.
A 20-year education. And it started with her background. We should mention, she came from a family that valued education and had the means to support it. Her father, Cheng Wang, was an MIT graduate and a tycoon in the oil and pharmaceutical industries.
So serious money, serious intellect.
Yes. And her mother, Florence Wu, was a translator for the United Nations. So you have this combination of business acumen from her father and this global diplomatic cultural fluency from her mother.
So she grew up in a world of high intellect and high society.
Absolutely. The records show she was a debutante, presented at the International Debutante Ball in 1968 at the Waldorf Astoria. That is serious old-school New York society. She went to the Chapin School, one of the most exclusive all-girls schools in the city. Then Sarah Lawrence College, where she studied art history and even spent time at the University of Paris.
Okay, so that's a key detail, art history. She wasn't studying fashion design.
No, she was studying composition, color theory, art movements, history. She was training her eye, not her sewing skills.
So she had this incredibly refined aesthetic education. She's studying art history. She's living in Paris. She's coming from this diplomatic, wealthy background. And immediately upon graduation from Sarah Lawrence, she gets hired at Vogue.
And not just hired. She became the youngest editor at Vogue.
Let's unpack that. Youngest editor, what does that even mean in that era?
It means she was a prodigy. The magazine world then was very hierarchical. You started as an assistant's assistant and worked your way up for years. To be made an editor that young meant she had an incredible eye and an even more incredible work ethic.
Okay, so we have to do the math here. She starts at Vogue right out of college. She stays there for 17 years.
17 years. Let that sink in.
That is a lifetime. In today's job market, staying somewhere for 3 years feels like an eternity. 17 years is a career. A full, complete career.
It really is. And think about what that job entails. Being an editor at Vogue, especially in the 70s and 80s under Grace Mirabella, wasn't just about picking nice clothes. She was a sittings editor.
Break that down for us. What does a sittings editor actually do?
So a sittings editor is the one on set. She's the one styling the shoot. She is working with the greatest photographers in history, Richard Avedon, Irving Penn, Helmut Newton. She is selecting the clothes, putting them on the model, and crafting the entire visual narrative of the photograph.
So she's not just observing fashion, she's creating the images that define fashion for millions of people.
She is responsible for the image. This means she is spending 17 years training her eye to see imperfection. A crease that's out of place, a hem that's a millimeter too long, a color that's slightly off under the lights.
It's like a residency for a surgeon, but for aesthetics.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of hours of intense visual training. She is learning fabric, she's learning drape, she is learning lighting, she is learning how a millimeter of difference in a hemline changes the entire silhouette.
But more importantly, she is learning the commercial side. She is seeing what covers sell on the newsstand and which ones flop. She is getting a master class in consumer psychology.
She's learning what women aspire to be, what images make them dream, and she's building a contact list that is, basically a who's who of the entire fashion industry.
And she was ambitious. She wanted the top job.
She wanted to be the editor-in-chief. She had put in the time. She had the skills. She had paid her dues. But the timelines are a bit complex here, but the gist is that she hit a ceiling. The top job was promised to someone else. She realized she wasn't going to get that top spot.
The history books tell us that spot eventually went to Anna Wintour.
Correct. So there's this moment of succession, and Vera isn't the chosen one. And once again, Vera is facing a failure.
Just like on the ice.
Exactly, the same pattern. She dedicated herself, she climbed to the very top, she's right at the finish line, and the door slams shut. She maxed out. She couldn't go any higher at Vogue.
So at age 38, 39, she leaves. And this is the part that blows my mind. She doesn't start her company then. She goes to work for Ralph Lauren. Why? She has 17 years at Vogue. She knows everyone. Why not just launch Vera Wang right then?
Because she knew she wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And that is such a humble, brilliant move. She had the humility to recognize what she didn't know.
Which was what?
She knew she had the eye from Vogue, but she didn't know the business. And nobody, and I mean nobody, knows the business of lifestyle branding better than Ralph Lauren.
Ralph Lauren isn't just selling shirts. He's selling a dream. He's selling the American aristocracy.
He's selling the Hamptons, the polo ponies, the old money aesthetic. He built an entire universe. Vera Wang spent 2 years there as a design director for accessories. So she's inside the machine.
What is she learning there?
She's learning about production, sourcing, licensing, marketing. How do you take a single idea, this sort of waspy elegance, and translate it into a dozen different product categories? Perfume, sunglasses, home goods, paint. She was watching how a massive commercial machine worked from the inside. She was seeing how you take a feeling and turn it into a product line that sells in department stores across the country.
So Vogue was her creative education, and Ralph Lauren was her MBA.
A 2-year real-world MBA from the master.
So by the time she resigns to start her own thing, she's 40 years old. She has 17 years of editorial experience and 2 years of high-stakes corporate design experience.
She had contacts, she had taste, and she understood the market. When people ask how did she succeed so quickly when she finally launched, the answer is she didn't succeed quickly. She spent 2 decades preparing.
That is such a powerful reframing. We love the overnight success story, but the 20-year apprenticeship story is honestly much more reassuring. It makes the success feel earned, not just lucky.
It's all about the prep work.
So, she's 40. She strikes out on her own. It's 1990. She opens her first design salon at the Carlisle Hotel in New York. Why Bridal? Where did that idea come from?
The story goes that she was getting married herself around that time and was just appalled by the options. It was a gap in the market that she personally experienced.
What was Bridal like in 1990?
It was very, let's say, traditional. Think big puffy sleeves, lots of lace, sequins, a bit stuck in the 80s princess fantasy. It wasn't fashion. It was a costume you wore once.
It was almost disconnected from what was happening on the runways of Paris or Milan.
Totally disconnected. It was its own weird little industry. It was a uniform.
So what does she do differently?
Vera Wang brought a fashion editor's eye to the wedding dress. She made it chic. She made it modern. She used sophisticated fabrics and techniques from couture evening wear. She stripped away the excess and focused on the silhouette, the drape, the architecture of the dress.
She treated the bride like a woman who loves fashion, not just a prop in a wedding ceremony.
Exactly. She gave them options that were elegant, a little bit sexy, modern. It was a revolution, and she made it a celebrity essential.
Right. We have to talk about the list, because looking at the source material, the list of people she has dressed is basically a directory of famous women from the last 30 years.
It is staggering.
Yeah.
And what strikes me is the variety. It's not just one type of celebrity. This is key to her strategy.
Okay, let's break it down. You have the political royalty. She dressed Chelsea Clinton. She dressed Corinna Gore.
Daughters of the president and vice president. That's a huge stamp of approval.
And then, on the other side of the aisle, she dressed Ivanka Trump.
Right. So she's bipartisan. She's dressing the daughters of the powerful regardless of party. That signals establishment. That signals class. That tells the wealthy mothers on the Upper East Side, this is safe, this is appropriate.
It's the ultimate status symbol. But then, look at the pop stars.
Totally different world. Mariah Carey, Alicia Keys.
Avril Lavigne.
Avril Lavigne, the punk pop princess. And even the Spice Girls' Victoria Beckham wore Vera for her wedding to David Beckham, which was basically a royal wedding for pop culture.
That's a completely different vibe. That's rock and roll, that's diva, that's edge. It's not the same message as dressing a first daughter.
Not at all. And then you have the Hollywood A-listers. Sarah Michelle Gellar at the height of her Buffy fame, Hilary Duff, Vanessa Hudgens, the young Hollywood set.
And we can't forget the reality TV era. This is where it gets really interesting. She dressed Kim Kardashian and Khloe Kardashian
For their weddings, which were massive media events, and this is a huge pivot in itself. A lot of high fashion designers at that time turned their noses up at reality stars.
They saw it as cheapening their brand.
They didn't want to be associated with that world. They thought it was tacky. Vera Wang didn't. She understood that these women were the new icons of influence. She saw the future.
It's genius. If you are a conservative bride from an old money family, you see Chelsea Clinton and think, Vera Wang is classy. If you are a trendy bride who follows pop culture, you see Kim Kardashian and think, Vera Wang is hot. She managed to be everything to everyone.
And that celebrity dressing extended to the red carpet, too. She wasn't just doing weddings. She proved she was a major fashion force, period. She dressed Michelle Obama.
A first lady?
A sitting first lady. That's another level of validation. And then she had these huge Oscar moments, like dressing Viola Davis in that stunning emerald green gown in 2012, or Sofia Vergara at the Emmys. She proved she could do color. She could do evening wear. She could do serious fashion.
But here is where it gets really interesting for me from a business perspective. Because usually when a luxury brand gets this big, when it's dressing first ladies and movie stars, they guard that exclusivity with their lives.
Oh, absolutely.
They don't want normal people wearing their stuff because they think it dilutes the brand.
That is the standard luxury playbook. Scarcity creates value. If everyone can have it, nobody wants it. You want the consumer to feel like they are part of a special club? The velvet rope effect.
Vera Wang took that playbook and threw it out the window.
She lit it on fire. She mastered the art of what we call mastige, mass prestige.
Mass prestige. Explain that.
She figured out how to sell the dream of Vera Wang to people who could never afford a $10,000 custom gown. She built an on-ramp to her brand.
Let's look at the deals, because they are massive. First, David's Bridal.
This was a game changer. In 2011, she launches White by Vera Wang at David's Bridal. Now, for people who don't know, David's Bridal is a huge national chain. It's accessible, it's affordable.
It's where most of America buys their wedding dresses.
Exactly. And now, suddenly, you can get a Vera Wang designed gown for $600 to $1,400.
That is a fraction of the cost of her couture line. But did it hurt her couture sales? Didn't the millionaire client say, wait, my dress is from the same designer who sells at David's Bridal?
That was the fear. That was what everyone in the industry predicted would happen. But it didn't. Not at all.
Why not?
Because she was smart about it. The white line had her design DNA, the clean lines, the elegant fabrics. But it's clearly a different product. The couture product was still handmade in her New York atelier with the finest materials. The David's Bridal line was produced at scale. The customer for the $15,000 dress knew they were getting something different than the customer for the $1,000 dress.
So she created a firewall between the two.
A clear firewall. And what the deal did was make Vera Wang a household name in every suburb in America. It meant that a bride in Kansas with a modest budget could still say, I'm wearing Vera. It democratized the name without cheapening the core product.
And she didn't stop there. The next move was even bolder. She went to Kohl's.
Kohl's?
I mean, no offense to Kohl's, but it's a department store chain known for discounts and practical family clothes. It's not the Carlisle Hotel.
Not by a long shot.
When I saw Simply Vera launched at Kohl's in 2006, I remember thinking, wait, isn't she the lady who makes dresses for Sharon Stone? What is she doing next to the toaster ovens?
Laughs. It was considered heresy by the fashion elite. They were horrified. In the fashion industry, exclusivity is the currency. You do not want your logo in the discount bin. It's supposed to be terrifying for a luxury brand.
So why did she do it? Was she desperate for cash?
No, she was visionary.
Yeah.
She understood something that most of her peers didn't. The woman buying the $10,000 wedding dress and the woman buying the $40 cardigan at Kohl's. Sometimes that is the same woman.
Or at least they aspire to the same aesthetic.
Exactly. The wealthy woman buying couture still needs a black t-shirt, and the woman on a budget still wants to feel elegant and sophisticated. She gave them an entry point.
It's creating a brand ladder.
A perfect way to put it. She gave women a piece of that high-fashion magic, maybe just a cardigan or a pair of sunglasses or a set of bed sheets, at a price they could justify on a Tuesday afternoon. And from a business standpoint, the volume at Kohl's is astronomical.
The math is staggering. You sell one couture dress for $10,000, or you sell 1 million t-shirts for $20. The t-shirts win every time.
That licensing revenue,
Yeah.
the money coming in from Kohl's, from David's Bridal, from the mattresses and the eyewear and the fragrances, that cash flow is what allowed her to keep the couture business independent for so long.
The $40 cardigans subsidize the art.
It's the Medici model, but instead of a bank, it's a department store funding the art. It's brilliant.
And she even hit the menswear market. She partnered with Men's Warehouse in 2012 for tuxedo rentals. So now the groom is wearing Vera, too.
She built a lifestyle empire. Fragrance, jewelry, eyewear, china, crystal. You could eat off Vera Wang plates, wear Vera Wang glasses, spray Vera Wang perfume, and sleep on Vera Wang sheets.
It sounds exhausting, honestly. Managing all those partnerships, keeping the quality control, making sure the Kohl sweater doesn't look too cheap while making sure the couture dress looks expensive enough.
It is incredibly difficult, and she's been open about that. There was this interview she did with CBS in 2013 where she actually described the transition from journalist to businesswoman as painful.
Painful. That's a strong word for someone who is making millions. What did she mean by that?
She talked about the loss of innocence. When you are just starting, or when you are a creative, you feel free. You just want to make beautiful things. You're thinking about art. But as you grow, you realize the weight of your decisions. She had this great quote about the difference between micro and macro work.
Oh, I remember this. She said she makes decisions that are micro, like a centimeter of proportion on a dress, and decisions that are macro, which impact the lives of her employees.
That is the burden of the founder. You have to care about the hemline, because that's the product, that's the art. But you also have to care about the supply chain, the HR policies, the retail contracts. Because if you mess those up, people lose their jobs. Families are affected.
It's a massive mental load, the artist versus the CEO.
And she had to be both for over 30 years.
And clearly she carried it well. By 2018, Forbes ranked her 34th on the list of America's richest self-made women. They cited her revenue at $630 million that year.
From zero to $630 million, starting at age 40. It is just an incredible trajectory.
But even with all this business success, all the red carpets and the Kohl's cash, she never really let go of that first love, did she?
No,
The ice kept calling her back.
it really did. And I find this part of her story so poetic. It's the ultimate full circle moment. She couldn't go to the Olympics as an athlete. That door was closed. So she found a way to go to the Olympics anyway.
By dressing the champions.
Exactly.
Hmm.
If you follow figure skating, you know that the costume is a huge part of the performance. It has to look beautiful, yes.
Yeah.
It has to catch the light. It has to tell a story. But it also has to be high-performance athletic gear.
Right. It can't just be pretty.
It has to stretch. It has to breathe. You can't rip when you do a triple axel. It has to be aerodynamic. It's a piece of engineering.
Who better to understand that than a former elite skater who is also a world-class designer?
She speaks both languages. She knows where the seams will rub. She knows how the skirt will move in a spin. She understands the athlete's needs in a way that a pure fashion designer never could. It's the perfect synthesis of her two lives.
We saw her designs on Nancy Kerrigan in 1992 and 1994.
The iconic looks. The white dress at the '94 Olympics, the one with the sheer black sleeves for the short program, they defined an era of skating elegance.
Then Michelle Kwan in 1998 and 2002. Kwan was known for her artistry, and Wang's costumes just elevated that.
They were breathtaking. Then she moves to the men, Evan Lysacek, in 2010. He won the gold medal in a Vera Wang costume that had this sort of snake-like design on it.
Yeah.
Very dramatic.
And more recently, Nathan Chen in 2018 and 2022, his looks were much more modern, more athletic, like a cool t-shirt.
Which shows her evolution. She didn't just keep making the same frilly dresses. She adapted to the sport's changing aesthetic. She's been dressing Olympic skaters for 30 years.
And getting recognition for it. In 2009, she was inducted into the U.S. Figure Skating Hall of Fame, not as a skater, but as a costume designer.
Can you imagine what that must have felt like?
That has to feel incredible. To stand in that Hall of Fame, the place you wanted to be when you were a devastated teenager, and arrive there on your own terms in a completely different role, having built an entire empire in the meantime.
It's validation. It proves that the failure back in 1968 wasn't the end of the story. It was just a plot twist. It was a thing that forced her onto the path she was meant to be on.
Speaking of plot twists, let's fast forward to the more recent years. Because it hasn't all been smooth sailing. Even legends stumble, and sometimes literally.
You are talking about the Spring-Summer 2020 show.
Yeah. This was September 2019. It was her big return to the runway after a 2-year hiatus. It was the 30th anniversary of the brand. The anticipation was huge.
And the clothes. The clothes were actually reviewed very well. The critics called them beautiful and seriously designed. Bridget Foley loved them. Godfrey says she has a distinctive fashion DNA. So creatively, she delivered.
But nobody was talking about the clothes the next day. They were talking about the shoes.
The shoes were a disaster, an absolute catastrophe. They were these incredibly high-angled heels. They looked almost like stilts.
And on the runway, 4 different models fell down.
4 models. That is chaos.
Yeah.
It completely derails the show. The focus shifts from the clothes to the drama.
Including Fei Fei Sun, who is a top pro. She's one of the best walkers in the business. And she fell twice in a row. It was a mess.
It was painful to watch.
And the press can be brutal when that happens. It's seen as a sign of disrespect to the models, that the designer prioritized a look over safety.
Vanessa Friedman from the New York Times didn't hold back. She wrote, and this is a direct quote, "In 2019, no woman should be tortured by what she wears."
Ouch. That stings, especially for a designer who prides herself on empowering women.
It does. But I think it's important to include this in the deep dive because it shows that even at the top of your game, after 30 years, you can make a mistake. You can push an idea too far. The fashion industry is high risk. A live runway show is a high wire act. Sometimes you fall.
But she bounced back, of course. She always does. Which brings us to the massive news that dropped in December 2024. The sale.
This is the capstone of the business arc. After 35 years of independence, which is rare in fashion, by the way, most brands get bought up much earlier. Vera Wang sold her company.
Who bought it, and what does that mean?
A brand management firm called WHP Global. They acquired the intellectual property, the IP of the Vera Wang brand.
Okay, so unpack intellectual property. Does that mean they own the name, the logos?
Exactly. They own the name Vera Wang. They control the brand. So did she just cash out and retire to a beach?
That's what I was wondering.
No, and that's the interesting part of the deal. The terms are very specific. She stays on as the founder and chief creative officer, and she becomes a shareholder in WHP Global.
So she sold the name, but she kept the job?
She sold the business infrastructure, the operational headaches, but she kept the creative control. She's still a visionary. It's a move to ensure the legacy outlasts her. By bringing in a massive management firm like WHP, which owns brands like Anne Klein and Toys R Us, she ensures that Vera Wang, the brand, can exist for 50, 100 years, just like Chanel or Dior. They have the capital and the global infrastructure to keep it going.
It's the ultimate move for immortality. She's ensuring the name on the door stays there, even when she's not the one walking through it anymore.
And in the meantime, she gets to keep doing the part she loves, the design, without maybe having to worry quite as much about the boring back-end stuff like supply chains and retail leases.
It reminds me of what happened to Halston or Donna Karan, where they sold and then lost control of their own names. They were eventually pushed out.
A classic tragic story in fashion.
It seems like Vera studied those failures and found a better way.
She always studies the failures. That's her superpower, her own and others. She saw how other designers lost their identities after selling, and she structured a deal where she stays in the driver's seat, creatively.
Let's pivot a bit to her place in the culture. Because Vera Wang isn't just a business, she's a pop culture character. She pops up everywhere.
She really does. She's a touchstone. A shorthand for luxury and aspiration. If you watch The West Wing, they reference her gowns as the pinnacle of style.
And Sex and the City. Both the show and the movie. Charlotte York's first wedding dress had to be a Vera. When it gets ruined, it's a huge plot point.
Right. And in the movie, Carrie Bradshaw models a Vera Wang gown for her Vogue shoot. It's the ultimate fantasy.
And she's not afraid to play herself. She was in Gossip Girl, she was in Ugly Betty, she was in the documentary The September Issue. She has a sense of humor about her own icon status.
She understands her brand. She knows she's a character in the cultural narrative. She even designed the uniforms for the Philadelphia Eagles cheerleaders.
Which is just another example of that high-low range we talked about. She can do the Oscars, she can do the NFL sideline, and she can do a Cole sweater. It's all part of the same universe.
Nothing is off limits.
We should touch briefly on the personal side just to round out the picture. We know she was married for a long time.
She married Arthur Becker in 1989, right before she launched her brand. It was an interfaith ceremony, Baptist and Jewish. They adopted 2 daughters, Cecilia and Josephine. They were a New York power couple for a long time.
But they separated in 2012.
They did. But by all accounts, it was amicable, and they continued to co-parent and even work together on some business ventures.
And there's one odd little detail in the source material that I feel like we have to mention just for accuracy, even though it's a bit random.
You mean the Epstein connection?
Yeah, it's in the records.
It is. In 2003, she contributed a greeting to a birthday book for Jeffrey Epstein. She made a joke about him appearing on The Bachelor. It's one of those weird historical footnotes that shows up when you dig into the social circles of New York's elite in the early 2000s.
Right. It doesn't seem to be more than that, but it's a data point. It shows everyone was in the same rooms at the same parties.
Exactly. It's just there in the record. But moving back to her professional recognition, she has been showered with awards.
Rightfully so. The CFDA, the Council of Fashion Designers of America, gave her the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2013. That's the highest honor in American fashion.
She received the National Medal of Arts in 2021 from the president. She was on the BBC's 100 Women list. She is, by every metric, one of the most successful American designers of all time.
So let's try to pull all this together. We started this deep dive talking about a wedding dress, a single, perfect white dress. But we've uncovered so much more.
We have. We have the story of a heartbroken skater who learned how to get back up. A diligent editor who worked for 17 years before getting her big break. A 40-year-old startup founder who wasn't afraid to start late.
And a savvy businesswoman who figured out how to sell luxury to the masses without destroying her brand's mystique.
It's the power of the second act. Or maybe the third act or the fourth.
I think that's the so what here. Vera Wang represents the idea that your first dream doesn't have to be your only dream. Your first failure doesn't define you.
You can be devastated at 19 because you missed the Olympics, and you can still end up a billionaire icon. The path isn't linear.
And she proves that technical expertise, whether it's the discipline of skating or the eye of an art historian, can be monetized in ways you never expect. Who knew that knowing art history would help you sell tuxedos at Men's Warehouse? But it did.
It all connects. Everything is material. Nothing is wasted. That's the lesson. All those hours on the ice, all those years in the Vogue closet, it all paid off.
I want to leave our listeners with a thought about that 2024 sale. We mentioned that she sold her IP but kept her job. In an era where founders are often the brand, think of Elon Musk or Martha Stewart, where the person is inseparable from the company, it raises a question. Can a brand like Vera Wang truly exist without the woman herself? Was the sale a savvy business move, or was it the first step in the brand losing its soul?
That is the billion-dollar question. Can you separate the creator from the creation? Coco Chanel has been gone for decades, but the brand is stronger than ever. Can Vera achieve that?
Or was this sale the ultimate move to ensure that the name becomes bigger than the person? To finally achieve a kind of corporate immortality that eluded her on the ice?
I think she's betting that it is. She's betting on the strength of the name she built over 75 years.
Yeah.
She seems to think you can, and she's betting her legacy on it.
A fascinating case study in reinvention. Whether you are prepping for a wedding, training for a sport, or just thinking about a career change at 40, there is something in the Vera Wang story for you.
Absolutely. Never stop pivoting.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Keep learning, stay curious, and we will see you on the next one.